Hello everyone and welcome back to La Vida Fútbol book series. My name is Luis Laureano. If you're new to the channel, I am a coach from California, currently living and coaching in Germany. And today's book is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. So this book is a book about habit and basically how it works and all that. I'm excited to share this book with you. So before we get started, I'd like to remind you guys to subscribe. You can do that at the bottom right hand side of your screen. And if you're interested in watching the other videos in the book series, you can find them on top there at the little cards section. So if you guys want to get notified every time I come up with a new video, you can also do that down at the bottom and at the subscribe button. And on the side of that, there's a little bell. Click on that and you'll be notified every time I come out with a new video. Firstly, what we're going to talk about is the book itself, what was in the book. So I'm going to give you guys a general summary. The book is divided into 3 parts. So the first part is focused on individuals. So basically focused on the habits that we have and essentially talking about how they're formed and the little pattern that is needed to essentially form a habit. Okay, so this is called the habit loop. So the habit loop is a 3-step process, and the first step is a cue. The next step is a routine, perhaps a response, and then the last thing is a reward. Okay, so all right, so what does this all mean? So a cue essentially is some sort of trigger, right? It's something that if you see it, if you smell it, if you just feel it, then that triggers a response or a routine that maybe you have. So for example, if you wake up, let's say at 7 in the morning and you turn on the TV. So in this case, maybe waking up and checking the time on your mobile phone, that would be the cue, right? And this will initiate you going to the TV, turning on the news, and then watching it. And essentially the reward would be maybe helping you wake up by getting informed with whatever is on the news or just being up to date with current events, whatever it is. So in part 1, there's also a section or a chapter called the craving brain. And in this chapter, they talk about an experience that researchers kind of went through to identify, well, what makes people work out. So researchers asked 266 individuals who work out 3 times per day. They asked them, well, what makes you work out? And a lot of them said, it's the feeling that I get from working out. So perhaps the endorphins or this also the feeling of accomplishment. So those were rewards that these individuals were kind of seeking. So now, in order for a habit to form, having a cue and having a reward essentially is not enough. If for example you wanted to start working out and you wanted to kind of start making it a habit, it's important that you first develop a cue, right? And this could be similar to what we talked about, what I mentioned earlier with turning on the TV as soon as you wake up. So maybe instead of turning on the TV, you wake up and you see your exercise gear right next to your bed, right? So this is something that perhaps you do the night before, but you create the cue the night before so that in the morning, when you see your exercise gear, it triggers a response. So once you see your clothing on the floor, your exercise gear, then it'll trigger a response. But that's going to take some time. At first, it's going to take some effort, right? A habit is essentially something that you do almost effortless, right? It's just boom, automatic. You see something, it triggers something else, you do it, you get a reward. Okay, so then if you guys wanted to work on, developing that as a routine for you guys, it will take some time. Just having a reward of feeling accomplished is probably not going to be enough. So what needs to happen is you guys need to develop a craving, or your brain needs to develop a craving for this reward. So what that means is that you set up your cue, which is putting your exercise gear right next to your bed, so that it triggers this certain routine, and the routine is what's important here. So seeing that triggers, okay, I need to work out, and then working out, and then the reward could be something that you enjoy. Maybe it's eating a little snack that makes you feel good, or maybe it's just logging what you did and kind of seeing that accomplishment and making that feel, making you feel good, which in turn becomes your reward, right? So that's essentially how this habit loop works. So the book uses an example with Febreze. Febreze is an air freshener, and essentially when it was developed, it was meant to be an odor killer, meaning it would kill bad odors, and it was advertised for that. And turned out that wasn't really what people wanted, right? So it did work. Spraying this Febreze on really bad odors did kill those bad odors, but it wasn't something that people were craving, right? Because then that would imply that you smell bad, or your house smells bad, or your car smells bad, whatever it is. But it implied that you smell bad. Nobody wanted that craving. So this Febreze team, they were pretty close to just kind of shutting down this whole project. And then they ended up visiting one of the people that that they gave a Febreze bottle to, and just to kind of check on how these people were doing. But there was one particular person that was almost done with her bottle, and so they asked her, like, okay, so what are you doing with Febreze? How are you using it? And it turned out that she actually used it as the reward in this habit loop scheme here. So basically what she was doing is she would clean her whole house, and then once her house was clean, she would spray Febreze all over her house to kind of just give it that finishing touch, and rewarding herself with a clean house that smelled good. So then that kind of just took off, and Febreze now is one of the top air fresheners all over the world. So that was important, to have that craving, that your brain needs something, and essentially with some hard work and effort, we all can try to develop these things. Okay, so something that I think might be interesting to you guys that was part of the book and still part of part 1 is the golden rule to habit change. And basically the rule is that you do not try to create new habits, but instead you try to change the bad habits that you do have. So in other words, for example, if you guys are at work, and you during your lunchtime, as soon as the clock hits 12 or 1 or whatever time it is that you go to lunch, that itself is a cue. That's a response to that triggers a response. So then this cue might lead you to certain fast food places, because maybe you only have an hour, and essentially you want to eat, you want to get that done, and you want to have some time for yourself. So then that is a cue, right? Maybe looking at the time, or maybe a colleague going to your desk, or going up to you wherever you are at work and saying, "Oh, are you ready for lunch?" And that triggers certain responses and certain routines inside your brain, right? So then your brain automatically goes to certain places, right? It's thinking this fast food place, that fast food place, and this essentially leads to unhealthy eating, which essentially leads to gaining weight. So now this is what that means with the golden rule for habit change is instead of saying, okay, well, I'm going to start eating healthy, which is essentially starting a new, creating a new habit, you change that routine. So as soon as the clock hits 12, as soon as your colleague goes up to you and tells you that it's time for lunch, you already have something planned. So maybe you have a list of healthy restaurants that you can go to, or maybe you eat a lunch that you prepared, and then the reward is essentially that you are satisfied with what you ate, right? But like I said earlier, it's changing the routine. So earlier, if you went to a fast food restaurant, then your reward might be that you still had that time, right? So maybe going to a healthy restaurant, if it's not a fast food healthy place, then the reward of having time after eating is no longer there. So you still want that, because we don't want to change the cue and we don't want to change the reward. We want to change the routine. And in this case, it could be something like just packing your lunch for the day, right? And that does require work and effort, and and that's essentially going to take some time, but eventually you develop it enough so that it becomes automatic. So that is essentially the golden rule to habit change. So part 2 of the book is the habits of successful organizations. So what is it about these successful organizations that make them successful? And what habits do they have that essentially led to them being, strong and successful organizations? And it was habits. So some successful organizations, they focus on what are called Keystone Habits. And these are habits that the company just kind of wants to revolve their whole company around. There was an example with a person named Paul O'Neill, and he was hired as president for this company, Alcoa. And essentially, this company was known for having some injuries and kind of losing people due to some injuries. And basically, when he was hired, his keystone habit was to just make the whole place safer, right? To create a safety protocol, to create safety situations, to build communication, to improve the health and safetyness of the employees. And that essentially became a culture. So this keystone habit of making things safer ended up being a culture, and basically everybody that experienced some sort of dangerous situation and did not yet have a protocol for that particular situation had the power to express that, and something would be done so that this situation would not happen again, or so that this situation would be safer in the future. So then that helped out the company a lot, and that led it to being a successful company. Another one is Starbucks. Starbucks, one of their keystone habits is essentially focusing on customer service through building discipline into all their baristas. So Starbucks offers this intense training for employees, and essentially they do a program also to help them respond to certain situations, bad situations, with or just negative experiences with customers. So they also help the employees learn how to react, and essentially that would be the cue, right? So whenever there was a misunderstanding with a customer, that triggered something. So that was the cue, and that triggered a response process that Starbucks calls the latte process. And then essentially the reward would be that things were fixed, and you essentially feel accomplished, right? Having dealt with such a situation. Okay, another thing that happens not only to companies but also to individuals, and this is crisis. So in part 2, they talk about the power of crisis, and essentially if you've ever gone through a situation where you just felt like you hit rock bottom, that is really a place where you start trying to go a different direction, and that's because there's no other way than up, right? I mean, if you hit rock bottom, then that really essentially means that you just you can't go any lower. So that is also another place for companies to kind of just rebuild and start really thinking about the future and what they can do better and how they can improve and really to analyze everything that they've done wrong, right? So I say that because I think for individuals that can also happen as well, right? That can definitely happen. All right, so the third part is habits in societies. This part was kind of just focused on how a city or a town may have some sort of norm that ends up becoming a culture, which in turn ends up becoming a habit. It's still going through the habit loop process, but they have some examples there that are also interesting, but that is something to expect in that section. Okay, so then the next thing that I'm going to talk about is essentially a little review, at least telling you what I think or what I thought about the book. And I thought it was a good read. I really enjoyed reading it, and I found myself reading this book out loud, which was interesting. I don't know what it was, but I'm not typically reading out loud, but this book I found myself reading out loud a few times, and maybe it was just listening to those examples out loud were I think more helpful, because the book did feel like a lecture in a sense. It felt like each chapter was a way to learn about habits and how they work and examples of them. So that was really cool to experience, and I think maybe that's part of the reason why I started reading out loud, which in turn, I mean, if I felt that it was helpful. Okay, so one thing that I think I would definitely add to this book that it didn't include is essentially after each chapter, at least after the three parts, would be to add a kind of interactive page, right, where there's questions and things to do to practice these things, and how to practice the whole habit changing or managing experience. So there is help at the end of the book, but I feel that it could have had certain interactive pages throughout. Like I said earlier, it felt like a lecture, and it felt like the examples that were given were helpful, and you can kind of learn from them. But having a place where you can write and interact after each chapter, after each part, I think that would have made the experience just a little bit better, and would have offered the reader a different experience if they got to interact while they were reading. Okay, good. So now, how can this help soccer coaches, right? So what is the purpose of this book, and how we can transfer what this book offers to our coaching and our soccer experience, and what I think is essentially the way you look at the game. So basically, after reading this book, and while I was reading the book, I also noticed that I found myself watching games and kind of watching the game as a whole lot of habits, right? So basically, everything that we do in the game appeared to me as a habit now, in a sense. So basically, tactical moves, for example. Let's say as soon as the left center back gets the ball, that in itself, depending on where they move, is a cue, right? That's already a trigger to, let's say, one of the strikers, right? Where do they move? Are they checking in, right? Or are they faking the defender out? Are they staying? And then the other striker is making that move. So that is essentially what I noticed after reading the book. I felt that all these tactical things were cues, and I started noticing them because I wanted to. After I saw a game situation that I liked, I wanted to go back and see, well, what was the cue, right? What made this player go to that direction? So that's one area where I felt that it could help coaches and can help coaches kind of notice habits, right? You can also identify bad habits, right? So, for example, a striker that simply just runs forward, right? Every time anybody has the ball in the middle, they run forward, right? That I would consider that a bad habit. If that's the only response to a player having the ball in the middle. So also noticing things from players as well. Just because you have that word, if you're reading the book, you have the word habit just coming out over and over and over again. And aside from, experiencing habits, in your soccer situation or your coaching situation, or just from watching games or whatever it is, you also, you kind of come back to yourself and you start noticing habits that you have, right? You notice habits that are good, bad, habits that you would like to modify perhaps. And I think that's another thing that we coaches could learn from and develop. So I would definitely recommend this book, and I would definitely say that it could help you and your coaching. And at the end of the day, it's knowledge. So if anything, you will get some new knowledge and wisdom from it, in a sense. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, hit that like button. Remember to subscribe. Remember to comment if you like this video, and I would like to know what you liked, and if you didn't like the video, I would like to know what you think would make this book series a little bit better. Also, if you have some books that you guys recommend to me and that you guys would like me to read, then just go ahead and comment that in the comment section below. And if this is something that you guys think would help somebody else, then go ahead and share this video with somebody else, and anybody that is into reading, and that you think that could help them, and or maybe another coach that you feel is always looking for some things to read and to learn. Send this video to them. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys liked the video. I hope it helped you guys in some sense. Get educated, read, learn, and let's become better coaches. I'll see you guys next time.